best practices for writing agentic coding. So I stumbled upon this interesting blog post by the Anthropic team, and although it is focused on cloud code, I believe it is relevant for all of us who are building agentic workflows or are using AI agents or AI coding assistants. I'm not going to go into depth into this blog post, but I just want to share with you some interesting frameworks or rule of thumbs or guidelines that they are sharing here, and I think they are pretty useful, and they are not necessarily only relevant for Cloud Code. Even if you're using Cursor or Windsurf, I think that these ideas, you'll find them interesting. So the first idea is customizing your setup and creating a Claude.md file. This is basically a special file that lets Claude automatically pull into context all the information about your specific project. This is going to be in the root of the folder, and it's going to consist of common bash commands, core files and utility functions, code style and guidelines, testing instructions, repository etiquette, developer environment settings, so which environment you're using, which compilers you're going to work with, any unexpected behaviors or warning particular to the project, and other information that you would like Claude to remember. And this is something that we also see in Cursor rules, we also see in Klein, and we also see in RuCode and in Windsurf. So having this markdown file that gives the LLM context about your project. So this, most of you probably already know this. So let's move forward. Here's an example of how they are doing this. So bash commands, npm run build, npm run type check, code style, workflow, etc. Now basically they are saying, and this is also something that you can do with other AI coding assistants, you can place the file in different locations based on the way that you're structuring your project. Now, obviously, you need to tune your Markdown file with the context of the whole context of the code base as you go, and you just adjust it. They are saying that they occasionally use the prompt improver, which is a solution, an out-of-the-box solution that you basically add your prompt, or you can add your Markdown file with the context, and it's going to improve it. And small improvements such as adding emphasis was important or you must, they usually seem to be improving the adherence of the LLM to the guidelines. Moving forward, curating a list of allowed tools. This is interesting, but not so interesting. I mean, there are more interesting stuff coming, so let's skip that. Giving Claude more tools, so this is straightforward. I mean, as many tools as you provide, you're going to add more predictability to the workflow or to the whole, to the workflow in general. So adding as many tools as possible, giving descriptive names, using a naming convention, document all the tools frequently with a very detailed description. I mean, not too detailed because you don't want the context to be too long, but they need to be descriptive and concise. But you need to think through because very often the LLMs, they don't know which they are calling tools unreliably. So sometimes they don't call the tools that they were supposed to. Sometimes they call the incorrect tools. So having a description of the tool is very important, as well as having a descriptive name. Obviously, they suggest adding MCP abilities to the project, whether using Cloud Code or any other coding assistant. I think from now on, I will just say Cloud Code, but you can understand that I'm referring to Cloud Code or any other coding assistant that you're using. Now, they are also offering to use / commands, and this is something that we can very efficiently speed up your process. So using / commands, so this is an example of a command. Please analyze and fix the GitHub issue. Follow these steps, and these are the steps for fixing the GitHub issue. Now, instead of writing this every time from scratch, you have this command which basically is going, whenever you call this command, it's going to execute this more detailed prompt. Now, this is the most interesting part of this blog post, in my opinion. So try common workflows. So basically, you have different workflows that they're proposing in order to build your projects or automate whatever you'd like. The first one is pretty straightforward: explore, plan, code, and commit. So first you ask Claude to read relevant files, images, or URLs. Then you ask Claude to make a plan for how to approach the specific problem. Then you ask Claude to implement its solution in the code. And then you ask Claude to commit the results and create a pull request. Now they're saying that step 1 or 2 are crucial, and many people, I guess, are overlooking the exploration phase and the planning phase, but they are crucial because without them, Claude tends to jump straight into coding a solution. While sometimes that's what we want, very often asking Claude to research and plan first significantly improves performance for problems requiring deeper thinking upfront. So you can say this is somewhat straightforward, but on the other hand, I think it's often overlooked, the exploration and planning phase. Now, the next workflow is very interesting. It's more like a test-driven development. So you write the test, then you commit, then you code, then you iterate, and then you commit. So they're saying this is an Anthropic favorite workflow for changes that are easily verifiable with unit integration or end-to-end test. TDD becomes even more powerful with agentic coding. First, you ask Claude to write tests based on expected input and output pairs. Be explicit about the fact that you're doing test-driven development, so it avoids creating mock implementations, even for functionality that doesn't exist yet in the code base. Then you tell Claude to run the tests and confirm they fail. Explicitly telling it not to write any implementation code at this stage is often helpful as well. Then you ask Claude to commit the test when you're satisfied with the test. Then you ask Claude to write code that passes the test, instructing it not to modify the test. So you tell Claude to keep going until all tests pass, and it will usually take a few iterations for Claude to write the code, run the test and adjust the code, and then run the test again. At this stage, they suggest it can help to ask to verify with independent sub-agents that the implementation isn't overfitting to the test. So this is something also very interesting. And we saw this already many months ago, basically proposed in a blog by the AIDER team, that when you are, whatever you're doing, it always makes sense to use a different agent or a different model to verify what you're doing. And this is what they are proposing over here. So after Claude wrote the code that passes the test, you commit the code base, and basically it means that you're ready to move forward. So they are saying Claude performs best when it has a clear target to iterate against, a visual mock, a test case, or another kind of output. By providing expected outputs like tests, Claude can make changes, evaluate results, and incrementally improve until it succeeds. So this is very, very powerful and very interesting. I never thought of doing test-driven design in when using AI coding assistants, and this is one of the main reasons why I wanted to use this blog post. Let me perhaps elaborate about test-driven design. Can you elaborate about the benefits of test-driven design, especially in the context of using LLMs to write the code? Please explain to 8th grade. Imagine that I know nothing about tech, and give me 2 or 3 analogies to make the ideas simple and clear. Let's see what it says. So basically, I think most of you who are already developers and have been developers before starting to use AI, you know what is test-driven development or test-driven design. So test-driven design is a way of building software where you write the test before you build the thing itself. It's like setting up goals first and then playing the game to reach those goals, not the other way around. Now, why is it helpful, especially when using LLMs? So normally when you ask an AI to write code, it might miss important things, it might make small mistakes, it might overcomplicate stuff, and it might hallucinate. And it's funny that actually the LLM is producing these answers. But on the other hand, if you tell the AI, here's exactly what should happen via test, then the AI has a clear finish line. It's much more likely to build exactly what you want correctly and safely. Without the test first, it's like asking someone to build bridge without telling them where the river is. Now, free analogies, let's see what it says in terms of analogy. So building furniture with instructions versus without. So without TDD, you just grab a hammer and wood and hope you build a chair. With TDD, you first write down it must have 4 legs, a flat sheet, and back you can lean on. Baking with a recipe versus guessing. So with TDD, you try to bake a cake by throwing random stuff. Without TDD, sorry. You try to bake a cake by throwing random stuff into a bowl. Maybe it works. Maybe you get bread soup. With TDD, you first say the cake must be sweet, fluffy, chocolate flavored, and rise 2 inches. Okay, you get the idea. Now here's a quick summary. So test-driven design or development could be very interesting with AI coding assistants. Moving forward, the next workflow that they propose. So we had the first workflow is basically explore, plan, code, commit. The second one is write test, commit, code, iterate, and commit. The next one is write code, take a screenshot of the results, and then iterate. This is something that I've been doing very often, and you probably have been doing as well. So let's move forward. Obviously, they should suggest connecting an MCP server that can scrape or take screenshots. Pretty straightforward. There are different ways to add your images. You can drag and drop, you can add files, etc. Another thing that they suggest doing is whenever you start working on a project, so start out with a Q&A, asking the LLM or asking Claude many questions about the code base. So how does logging work? How do I make new API endpoints? How does X do? Y? What edge cases does a specific function handle? Why are we calling the specific function instead of this function on line X, etc. Moving forward, another workflow they suggest is using Claude to interact with Git. So you can search Git history. You can write Git commits, which I always do. Whenever I do a commit, I ask the AI to write the commit message for me. Handling complex Git operations like revetting files, resolving rebase conflicts, etc. So this is also something that I often do. I'm using mostly Windsurf. Next, we have the workflow, which basically is suggested that you use Claude to interact with GitHub. So creating pull requests, implementing one-shot resolutions, fixing failing builds, etc. Let me move forward because this stuff is interesting in my opinion. This a bit advice regarding optimization of the workflow. So first of all, obvious, be specific in your instructions. Here are some examples about poor instructions versus good instructions. So if you've been prompt engineering for a while, you know what is the difference between a good instruction and a poor instruction. We just, I mean, my mistake is often that I prioritize speed over writing thorough prompts, but obviously there is a fine line between moving too fast. I mean, there is a middle ground between being slow and being descriptive and detailed, and I think that these examples pretty much showcase more or less the amount of lines that need to be incorporated into different instructions. You don't necessarily always need like a very long and detailed prompt. Moving forward, so providing images, we discussed this already. URLs, we already discussed this. Course correct early and often, pretty straightforward. Here, they mention the fact that you can you should ask Claude or your AI coding assistant to generate a checklist for more complex workflows, and then just start ticking these on any task that was already fulfilled. Over here, they suggest creating just many workflows with different agents. We discussed this already. Using Git work trees, also a very common practice by more experienced developers. And that's pretty much it. Yeah, I guess the main interesting part in this blog, in my opinion, I mean, most of it is interesting. Some of it is quite straightforward, but the most interesting part, in my opinion, was the workflows, and specifically this workflow of doing a test-driven development. It makes a ton of sense, and I'm definitely going to implement this in my upcoming projects. Yeah, that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this short video. If you have any feedback, please leave it in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. And until next time, keep on automating.